In this presentation, we will restore a QuickBooks file. The QuickBooks file that we will be restoring is the one that we will use as we learn to navigate through the system. In other words, as we learn to get in and out of different areas in QuickBooks, as we learn the data input fields, as we learn the reports, it's nice to have some data already in there so that when we generate reports, it has data in it. Now, if you restore the backup file that we have, then you'll have the exact same data we have. That's one of the major benefits as we go through the data to have the same data in there. Not a requirement, however. So for this beginning part of the course, you may use your own data if you so choose and just follow along and just note that the numbers will be different, although the navigation process, which we'll be concentrating on, will be the same. You can also use the QuickBooks practice files. They provide a few practice files that provide data for you, and use those to navigate through as well. If you're opening QuickBooks and you have no data in it, then you really want to choose one of these options. We would recommend in any case to use and restore the file that we provide here if you have it, because that will allow you to have the same numbers and you can work with multiple QuickBooks files so it doesn't have any added cost even if you have your own company file or some other file as well. You can also then, we would recommend the second option being to use the QuickBooks practice files having different numbers but having some data in there so that you can help navigate through it with actual data in the system. Later on in the course, we're going to actually create a new company file from scratch and add 2 months of data within it. The practice file that we are using here is actually the end result of 2 months worth of data entry. So this is kind of like the answer key. This is where we are going to end up after 2 months of data entry once we get to the practice problem format or part of the course. So as you navigate through this, you're also going to get familiar with the types of data, the types of information, the types of forms, and the types of company information that we will be using once we actually create this QuickBooks file. When you download the backup file, it'll look something like this. We got the Get Great Guitars. It's a backup file. Note that the file type is a backup file. Therefore, we cannot just double click on this and open it. We have to restore it. Also note that if you download the backup file and it is in a zipped folder, then you want to put it someplace else. You may want to just simply copy that file out of the zipped folder and then place it in some other location. I'm just going to paste it right here. So that's going to be our backup file. It looks like a normal QuickBooks file, but note right here it says a backup file. We will not be able to open the QuickBooks file. Also note that once we restore it, we'll have this backup file, and then we're going to put the restored file in some other location. So then you want to set up, well, where do I want to put the restored file? We're going to put the restored file in the Get Great Guitars folders. That's where the restored file will be located. We'll then have a backup file and then the restored file. So we're going to then open up QuickBooks. We're going to actually open up the QuickBooks software and then go through the restoration process. When you open up QuickBooks, it may take you to the normal QuickBooks file that you are already in. It might just try to default and open up into that company file. And for most people that just work with one company file, that's kind of the routine. So note that even though you have one company file you use all the time, you could use the backup file and then just simply have 2 company files. Just make sure you know where the actual files are at. Now, if this happens, you could then actually restore up top. You don't even need to exit the company file. You could just go to the file up top, and we can go to the open or restore the company here. I'm going to close this company file so we can see what happens if we don't have the company file open, or if we were to open a fresh QuickBooks file. So we're going to close the company. So we will close company. And then we have our intro screen, which is the no company open. These are the recently opened files. We have the create a new company if we wanted to create from scratch, or we can go to open or restore an existing company file from here. We could use this. This is what we're going to do. I like to use the drop down to the file tab up top because it's there no matter what screen you're in, and go to the open or restore company. So we'll go to open or restore company. The first default option is to open the company. That would be with a QBW file. We want to restore a company file. Therefore, we will choose the second item and then select next. We're going to restore the backup file. We're going to have a local backup file. It's not online. Local means it's going to be on basically our desktop, something connected to our computer. Therefore, we're going to say next. And then we're going to locate the backup file. So the backup file, mine is going to be on the desktop. And I just put it on the desktop and I just copied it on there. So we're looking for this one. So we're going to open that up. I like to double click on it. You could click on it one time and select open if you so choose. I typically will simply double click on it. Note that it does say that it's a QBB file, which is a backup file as opposed to a QBW file, the QuickBooks file that we will actually be using once opened, once restored. We're then going to open that up, and then it says, where do you want to restore the file? So now we need to put, once we restore it, it will make a new file located in some other location. I'm going to say next, and then it says, where do we want to put it? I'm going to put it on the desktop. I'm going to put it into the Get Great Guitars folder that we have set up. So it's going to go into Get Great Guitars. And then within here, I'm going to label it Get Great Guitars. I'm going to put just a 1 in front of it so I know which one it is. I'll have to. And so I'm going to say save it. So then we'll just say save. And then it'll basically restore it and locate that file into that folder. Now, the files that we will be using will all have the same password that we will need to be using. It's going to be GGG1234. Get Great Guitars GGG1234. Then we're going to say OK. And then here we have our restored file. So here is our restored file. I'm going to close it, then locate it on our computer, and then open it back up from there so we are sure that we know where the exact location is. So I'm going to go, you can go to the File tab and close. I just close it up top, usually here. I'm going to close it up and say yes. Back to the desktop. Notice we have our QuickBooks here. We could just simply open QuickBooks and it'll probably default to that last file we had open and try to open it because that's what QuickBooks will generally do. However, we could go to the actual file and open it from there in a similar fashion like we might do with a Word document or an Excel type document. Let's locate the file because we definitely want to know where it is at. We put it here. I'm going to double click on this one. And then I'm going to scroll down. Now, it creates some other kind of files once we put it in here, but this is the file that we're looking for. Notice here that it's a QBW file as opposed to what we had before on this side, which is a QBB file. That's the backup file. So now we have two files, the backup file and the actual file. Now, we can open the actual file by simply opening QuickBooks, as most people do, and it'll default to the last QuickBooks file that we had open, which was this one. If we're only working with one company file, it'll always be there. It'll also have that recently opened window as well. However, if you work with two files, for example, if you're using this file to practice with and you have another company file, then you want to make sure you know where those two different files are located so that you can go back and forth between the two of them. The ability to go back and forth between the two of them is a great tool, a great benefit to have within QuickBooks. Now, you could open this by simply opening up this file. This is not the way most people do it, but you could do it that way just like you would with a Word document or Excel. The reason most people do not is because they usually only are in the same file, and therefore it's easier to just click on the giant icon and go to the one file that you use all the time. So I'm going to double click on this one. It will once again ask for our password, which is going to be Get Great Guitars GGG1234. Get Great Guitars GGG1234 and OK. And here is our restored data. Now, if you just want to check to make sure there's data in it, you can go to the reports drop down up top. I would go down to the accounts and taxes and then go to the trial balance. So it'll give us basically a list of accounts. And then we would change the dates up top. I'm going to say tab. I'm going to say the dates are going to be going from 01/01/20. And I'm going to say to the end of February. This is the data that we will be working with in 2020. It'll be to 02/29/20. There's 29 days in 2020, apparently, in February. So this is the data. So this is the data that you should have then as of this date range in the trial balance. And so we will be working with this data as we navigate in future presentations.